I am stoked today to be with Alexis Volen, COO of Cire Equity. I've had the pleasure of working with Alexis for over 7 years now, and I think really highly of you, by the way. You amaze me, all you do.
Thank you.
She is a dynamo. She runs a large real estate investment firm and manages people with great leadership skills, and I've always admired you from afar, so I just want to say that on camera.
Creepy.
Super creepy. One thing I kind of amazes me, I know you have 2 young children.
Yep.
And you work your tail off. How do you balance it all?
Not well all the time, but I think one of the things I've learned over the years is that really it's just about being present in whatever I'm doing. So if it's work, being fully focused at work, and then when I'm with my kids or at home, trying to be 100% present. Again, I'm guilty of checking my emails late at night or those things where, you're trying to separate work-life balance, and COVID's been especially difficult. But overall, I think that's one of the things. The other big one for me is really looking at it. I was an athlete through high school and college, and so one of the things to not get injured is you always have to recover. And so it's the sprint, the recovery, and making sure I'm planning in those recoveries of vacation or a weekend off and putting things down for a little bit. And for me, that's the best way I've found to balance kind of the work life.
Okay, that's a good point. Just making sure you build time for rest.
Yeah.
Which a lot of us don't do.
I know, we go too hard for too long, and it's not sustainable.
I noticed you just won a pretty prestigious award, 50 under 40, and I wonder, who do you look up to, or who's been a great mentor for you over the years? And I say over the years, you're a lot younger and more successful than me, so
no, not in
my ego has a problem with that, but we'll talk about this. It's a topic for another day. But yeah, generally, who have you looked up to, and who do you model your leadership after?
I think it's not one singular person. It's been a lot of different people along the journey. Definitely within the organization, we have some great leaders at the top that teach me about the industry and accountability in different aspects all the time. But even new members to our team, on our executive team, like the thoughtfulness of sending a gift on a birthday or an anniversary and how meaningful that is to an employee. So constantly learning from people within the organization, but also I actually have 2 business coaches that I meet with monthly, and it just gives me different perspective. It's somebody outside the organization that can really share insights and give me another view and really hold me accountable to what I own in things. So that's been huge for my mentorship. And then finally is networks, like crew network, IMN. I try to stay involved, trying to even get outside and network with you or anyone else to just hear what's going on in other industries and be able to apply it back, because sometimes that's really beneficial too. Yeah.
Maybe you can tell us a little bit about Cire Equity. I obviously know what you do, but if you were to kind of explain your organization in 60 seconds, what is it that you do?
Sure. So we're a private equity real estate company that really focuses in commercial assets. So we raise capital from investors, and then we go out and deploy it in different commercial real estate assets. Right now, it's a makeup of multi-tenant retail and industrial and other single-tenant assets. And we focus on the Western U.S., and we also do joint ventures, and sometimes we raise money for other operators. But I'd say for the most part, we're an operator of real estate, is kind of the simplest way to put it.
How would you, and I work with you, so I have an insight. I feel like everybody at Cire is just high performing. And describe your culture and how you, create that culture of high performance and execution, because I would say every level of person I work with at Cire fits that mold, and it's pretty unique. We don't see it with a lot of our clients.
Well, that's good to hear, and I think that's been a journey for us of really kind of perfecting, and we're never perfecting, but progress in that. I think a couple things, like defining culture first and foremost is, it's consists of your national values, industry values, and then the company and people. And so I think one of the interesting things is the industry itself has a certain set of values that are longstanding. It's a bit archaic, but what makes Cire a little bit different in its culture is that I think we operate more like a tech industry and put a focus on the culture that they foster in a tech industry more than a real estate industry. And so that drives innovation, it drives retention, it really looks at hiring the best people because it's so competitive in tech. You know, you're going to get poached from Facebook to Apple, you know, or some other place, so you have to be putting a lot of focus on your people in that environment. So I think we've really learned from the tech industry on how to properly build a culture, and so it's made us more adaptable, a little bit more innovative, really focus on our hiring and retention and what it means to really create like a culture that is safe and people can make mistakes and do things that really, I think, in the long term benefit our relationships and our business.
Okay. You know, my next question, you maybe answered a little bit and I'll go off script, but the question was, how do you differ from your competitors? And maybe I'll narrow that as, how do you find these employees and create these, I'll call them A players at every level?
Yeah. I think it's really about hiring, and the interview process is a big piece of it on the front end. We spend a lot of time defining out what we're looking for, and then we know we don't know it all. So we actually just recently brought in a top grading consultant. So we use consultants a lot, and so she was really able to give us the things to listen for in an interview. You know, if someone's not giving you specific examples and details of how they've performed, or, you know, don't tell stories in your own head that they are an A player. Really dig in and ask those questions on the front end. So that's been huge in helping us, find the right talent. I think the other is then keeping that talent, and that goes back to our culture and creating a place where A players need to be surrounded by other A players. If you're tolerating B and C players around them, that's demotivating. And then it's also giving them the autonomy to actually do what you hired them to do. And I think a lot of times that gets stifled in some organizations that get a little too large, or there's so much bureaucracy that, you know, you can have these A players that really don't have the freedom to do what you hired them to do.
Right.
So I think that's a couple of the things that has allowed us to really create a high performing team.
Right. Funny, I just read a little snippet about there's nothing worse for high-performing employees to be surrounded by poor-performing employees, and that they're actually tolerated by management. So that's such a key takeaway. As a leader of an organization and a young leader, what kind of tools or things are you doing to continue to grow and build out your leadership skills?
I'm actually back in my master's program right now.
Oh.
Yep, so.
Work-life balance,
Yep.
Masters, 2 kids.
Yep, I got that signed off by the wife before I did it. But
Okay.
yeah, so, you know, that's one way I felt like, you know, I've spent almost 10 years at the same organization and growing and developing, and that's by asking a lot of questions. You know, I get on the phone with you and want to know how insurance works. And so it's trying to learn those things from all the resources and relationships that you have. And so for me, it was also going out and doing that in a master's program, but also joining a lot of networks has been huge. There was a great book, Think Again, by Adam Grant, and he talked about how we look for insights. But really, a way to be more innovative and creative is outsights. And so it's networking with people outside of your industry or just outside of your day-to-day business, and then you have all this creativity flowing because something you're doing in insurance might reflect on real estate, and then you're thinking about how you do things a little bit differently. And so I've really tried to throw myself into more networking and reaching out to different industries and talking to more people so that I can have those outsights. Yeah.
That's the good point. Learning from others out of your industry, right? We all get stuck in our industry. What, especially in the last 18 months and just all the growth you've had, what do you view as your biggest challenges as a leader at Cire, or however you want to answer that question?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many challenges. You know, I think one of the things that I look back on and maybe am most disappointed by, or challenges that I've had to really work on, is being radically candid. And so I think early on, before we have really kind of hit our groove on team members, I didn't always give the direct feedback that needed to be given to give somebody an opportunity to improve, and just overly empathetic. And so I think that's been a real challenge for me is learning that it's a disservice to anyone to not give them the direct feedback that they need to improve, because they're just going to continue doing what they're always doing. So I think that's been something that I've really worked on over the last few years, and can see the dividends it pays, because somebody's grateful that you're investing that energy to tell them how to do something better, and that you actually care and you want to see them succeed. So that's been a huge challenge to overcome, because naturally I just want to be like, everything's okay, you know, like we can get through it. It's, you know, you're doing great, and that like promoter of people. But at the end of the day, it's a disservice to people to not be honest.
Well, I feel like you've been radically candid with me over the years, so you've gotten pretty good at it. You know, and this is super off script, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but as a young female in a, let's face it, real estate is super male dominated, probably more than even insurance actually. Like, how has that balance been? I have 2 young daughters, so I always love these kind of stories of how to, there's so much, of that paradigm that we've all grown up with, and how do you change that paradigm and succeed in candidly one of the most male dominated industries I've seen?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. It's hard, because I feel like I've had a lot of great support and sponsors, I guess you could say, mentors and sponsors who've really advocated for me and my growth. And I think that's what it takes, is having the allies in the industry, because it is still so heavily dominated by men. Is you really do need other men promoting you as a woman or a minority to come up through the industry. But it's also, again, join crew, and it's so nice, and it's inspiring to be around other women who've forged the same path and have, kind of done things and bucked the trend of jumping into construction or these other, within real estate, and hearing those stories and being able to understand that there's other people doing it, and having that like little group to know that you're not alone has been pretty powerful. But really it's the opportunity. I've been extremely privileged in the opportunities that I've had to be able to shine, and that really comes down to men trusting me to do that, right? So I hope that changes, where there's more diversity,
more women,
at the top, that it doesn't take just male allies. But for me, that was one of the big.
That's been a positive. That's good to hear.
Yep.
In terms of your company and the industry, I mean, where do you see Cire and the industry in 5, 10, 15 years?
Well, where I see Cire, I mean, I think Cire, we've been on a pretty quick growth trajectory for the last 10 years. So I see that continuing. We recently just talked about the 10-year vision, and really, I mean, it's a 500x over what our current AU assets under management are. We'd like to have $5 billion under management. So, some lofty growth goals.
How does that make you feel? Because you're running it.
I mean, for me, it's exciting. I like a challenge, glutton. But I think where the industry is going. There's some shifts in prop tech. I think that's where we have a real advantage, is being a little bit more forward thinking and a little bit more tech culture, is that the innovation that's actually happening in real estate technology is evolving pretty quickly. So I think that's a big piece that staying up and current with could transform some of the things. There's also the industry's evolving with a more focus on ESG, which is environment, social governance. So, over the next 5 to 10 years, I really hope that, I want to see those trends continue. So it's hard to say. There's been a lot of capital flowing into real estate. So, inflationary markets, which means more capital flowing in and out of the stock market and potentially into real estate. So, we could be on another run for a bit. Yeah. But it's really just preparing us for both the upside and the downside, so.
And then if you were going to give a piece of advice for a young leader, especially a female leader, and again, this was off script, and I don't expect you to be perfect, but what would you say?
I think one of the things would be know yourself, figure out what you do well, and I think there's a lot to be said for having that self-awareness, and then be able to market yourself. I think one of the things that women don't do as well as men is, which is a strength up until a certain point, is they give credit to everybody. Great team makers, hey, we all did a great job. But there's a certain point where you need to make sure that you're marketing yourself and the product that you're bringing as a woman. And so that's the piece that I think, there's a shift at a certain level where you have to make it clear what contributions you specifically made to an organization. And I think it's so funny because, the reverse is at a certain point, men need to make sure that they're bringing other people up and doing the team player. And that's, that's general blanket statements. Not all men or women are like that.
Correct.
But I would say those are, if I were speaking generally, those are a couple of the things that I would say, at least seeing women in my organization or, through networks, like that's one piece that once you know yourself, you know what you do well, and you've proven that competence, make sure you get the credit for it.
And then I guess the last and probably most important question, would you say I'm the greatest insurance person you've ever met?
Absolutely, without a doubt. Call Bill.
Call Bill. Well, thank you for your time today. Really, really appreciate you spending an hour with us to learn more. I encourage you to check out Cire Equity. Amazing company, amazing people. And that's a wrap.